The Confederation, 1776 to 1790. How did the flaws of the Articles of Confederation lead to the creation of the Constitution?
Good evening, and welcome to another segment of the American Chronicles. Today we are joined by historians Varsha Sarma, Sita Subramanian, and Patricia Takero as we take a look back at the Confederation.
On November 2nd, 1783, General George Washington rode his horse to the barracks at Rock Hill, New Jersey, to the sound of thunderous applause. The peace treaty had been signed with England. At only 51 years of age, Washington was already considered the father of his young country.
The Americans had just won the Revolutionary War. The colonies were free, independent, but still in disunity. Almost every colony had its own form of governing document. They were the United States of America, but they still lacked the means of a unified nation.
Most states still abided by documents of fundamental law that pertain only to their specific state. In addition, many of these states had their own Bill of Rights that required an annual selection for state legislators.
The Continental Congress joined together in 1776 with the purpose of drafting a new constitution. The result, the Articles of Confederation. The Articles provided a governing body which the states needed if they were going to claim they were a new nation.
These weaknesses in the Articles of Confederation were about to create major problems for the young country. While the Articles were effective in stopping a tyranny, the country was not able to govern itself or to defend itself against attack or rebellion. This weakness was about to be dangerously exposed.
The Articles intentionally made the federal government weak. After all, they had just fought a war in order to be freed from the oppressive governing body of Great Britain. The states distrusted power because Britain abused it.
As a result, the states chose their new form of government to be a confederation, a union of states in which a federal government and state government exist. However, the state government was to retain the most sovereignty, to do as they pleased. This, as expected, was not successful.
The Articles of Confederation was completed in 1771 and ratified on March 1, 1781. However, disputes between states still existed.
States with abundant amounts of land had the opportunity to sell the land and pay off war debts, while smaller states did not have the luxury of doing so. In a compromise, the land was given to the federal government, who promised to distribute the land for the good of the nation.
This gesture was approved in the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. The Northwest Ordinance was one of the only two laws passed under the Articles of Confederation, the other law being the Land Ordinance of 1785. This allowed all of the land in the Old Northwest to be sold for the purpose of paying off war debts. These were the only agreements made under the Articles.
However, there were more negative effects produced by the Articles of Confederation than there were positive effects. First, the British refused to repeal the Navigation Acts. They wanted to ensure that the colonists paid back debts that they owed Loyalists. Next, Spain closed the Mississippi River to American commerce and took advantage of land that was given to the U.S. by Great Britain.
The colonists did not have any control. They had a government that represented America but did nothing else. The U.S. could not control nearly half of their land. England and Spain took advantage of the Americans before their eyes, and the Americans did not do a thing about it. They were too weak.
Aside from foreign discrepancies, the Americans had enough of their own problems piling up at home. They refused to pay taxes. The federal government did not have the right to collect taxes. As a result, debt was increasing exponentially. In addition, states began to tax goods from other states, and disputes over land led to battles.
Dawn broke cold that day on January 25th, 1787. But the orange light did nothing to warm the frozen faces of over 1,000 men outside the federal arsenal in Springfield, Massachusetts. The group of farmers and ex-revolutionary soldiers knew that the ammunition they would need to march on Boston and overthrow the government was within their grasp. All that stood in their way were 900 militia troops. Captain Daniel Shays rode forward on his horse and demanded parley with Captain Samuel Bussington, who had fought alongside Shays in many bloody battles of the Revolutionary War. This was D-Day for the popular uprising called Shays' Rebellion. Across the entire country, the flames of civil war seemed ready to ignite. What happened on this day between Shays' rebels and the government soldiers would bring these conflicts to a head and would lead to no less than the creation of the Constitution of the United States. March!
Additionally, the farmers were upset that they had to pay mortgage on land when they were not even paid to fight in the Revolutionary War.
This demonstrated the weaknesses of the federal government. The federal government did not have the power to repeal the taxes from the states or even help the citizens. This incident was the reason for the creation of the Constitution.
The people began to doubt the Articles of Confederation. Some believed that the Articles just needed to be revised. Others believed that the entirely new form of government needed to be created.
Shortly after, delegates from the states came together to discuss the Articles of Confederation. They quickly decided to obliterate the Articles and draft a new constitution. This time, the national government would be stronger. The question was, how much stronger?
Two sets of plans emerged: the New Jersey Plan, which hoped to give equal representations to the states, and the Virginia Plan, which wanted representation to be decided by population.
The Founding Fathers knew that these differing plans would not strike well with the state governments. This led to the creation of the dispute between Federalists and Anti-Federalists.
But agreement on the design of the replacement government would take 16 brutal weeks of argument. The group that soon became known as the Federalists wanted a stronger federal government that had the ability to raise an army as well as the ability to tax. The Anti-Federalists wanted most of the power to reside within the individual states because they were afraid of a new tyranny. They eventually arrived at a compromise with the states sharing power with the federal government. And on September 17th, 1787, the Constitution was signed into law.
Eventually, the Great Compromise came about. It was decided that Congress would have two houses: the House of Representatives, where the number of representatives was determined by population, and the Senate, where each state would have two representatives. Also, there would be a stronger federal government, where the president would be commander-in-chief of the military and had the ability to veto legislation. Finally, the election of the president would occur through an electoral college.
Federalists desired a strong national government. They tended to be more respectable, and many of them were former Loyalists.
Anti-Federalists, on the other hand, opposed the Constitution and desired a Bill of Rights because they believed that the federal government would be too strong without limitations. Many of the Anti-Federalists were typically poor farmers.
Federalists believed that every branch of government represented the people, unlike the Anti-Federalists, who believed that only the legislative branch did so.
In an attempt to obtain supporters, John Jay, James Madison, and Alexander Hamilton contributed to the Federalist Papers. The Constitution was finally ratified on June 21, 1788, with a Bill of Rights.
Shays' rebellion troubled the nation and exposed the weakness of the Articles of Confederation, which gave very limited power to the federal government. The public desperately clung to the hope that George Washington would again be the man to lead them out of darkness.
This was the beginning of the United States of America. The states were unified. The government could represent the people. And the nation had compromised to take its first steps towards political recognition.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died and who gave that right to me.
Join us next week on another installment of The American Chronicles.